Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, The Intimacy Lab. Let me ask you something. Have you ever sat across from a man who said very little yet somehow you felt completely seen? A man whose presence was like a still lake, calm on the surface, but underneath something mysterious was always moving. You couldn't quite explain it, but you knew there was more to him. He was hiding something, not in a deceptive way, but in a powerful, magnetic way, and that mystery, it pulled you in. You see, the most powerful men don't raise their voices. They don't rush to explain, and they never reveal everything, not to impress, not to dominate, but to protect something sacred, their internal world. In a world where oversharing is the new normal, their silence is strategic. Their secrets are not lies, they are boundaries. And every woman, whether she admits it or not, feels the heat of that tension. The powerful man creates an emotional distance that draws you closer. He chooses what to show and what to withhold, and tonight I want to take you into that space, behind the eyes of the kind of man every woman remembers. We're not here to play games, we're here to understand. Because once you see these 5 secrets, you won't just see men differently. You'll see power differently. There's something I want to tell you, something we don't talk about enough. When a man becomes powerful, not by money or muscles, but in spirit, in character, in clarity, he begins to understand that intimacy is not about exposure. It's about discernment, and that's where it begins. Powerful men don't tell you everything, they tell you just enough. And that is the first secret, secret #1. He does not reveal his full emotional landscape. Now this isn't about being cold or unavailable. In fact, the most powerful men feel deeply, but unlike boys who confuse honesty with spilling everything, these men choose silence with intention. Not because they don't trust you, but because they trust themselves more. They've learned that not every storm needs to be witnessed. That real strength is not in proving pain, but in carrying it wisely. I've sat across from women who say, "Why doesn't he open up more?" And I ask, what would you do with what he showed you? You see, many women say they want full emotional access, but the truth is some emotions are too raw, too primal, too sacred to be handled casually. A powerful man knows this. He shares his feelings through presence, not just words, through a hand on your back when you're falling apart, through the way he notices when you're pulling away and pulls you in without even touching you. He feels everything. But he reveals selectively, because emotional control is not emotional suppression. It is emotional protection. And women may not always understand it, but they always feel it. And that brings me to the second truth. Secret #2, he keeps his purpose bigger than the relationship. This one cuts deep, especially in romantic partnerships. Because we are told, especially in stories and movies, that love should be the center of our lives, but for powerful men, love is not the center. It is the gravity, and their life, their mission, their vision, their inner calling, that's the orbit. A man without purpose is easy to control. A man with purpose, he's impossible to fully own. When a woman meets a man who prioritizes his mission over everything at first, it feels frustrating. Why does work always come first? Why can't he just slow down and be present with me? But underneath that frustration is respect. Deep respect, because something in her knows he's not chasing me to fill a void. He's already full. He's not trying to be completed by me. He's trying to contribute to me, because he already knows who he is without me. That kind of man is terrifying and irresistible all at once. He doesn't chase approval. He doesn't lose himself in romance. He leads with direction, and ironically, because his relationship is not his identity, he becomes more desirable inside it. Because women don't want to be your everything. They want to be with someone who already has everything, internally. I remember once, a woman in her 40s told me, "He made me feel like I wasn't his whole world, and that made me want to be in his world even more." Because when he chooses you, It's not out of need, it's out of alignment, and that brings us to something a little harder to swallow. Secret #3. He does not explain his boundaries, he enforces them silently. This is where most men fail. They argue, they explain, they try to make women understand why they need space, why they pulled back, why they're not okay with certain behaviors. But powerful men, they don't negotiate their limits, they embody them. They know when something is crossing the line, not because it's dramatic, but because it's subtle. It's how she speaks when she's angry. It's how she tests with sarcasm or small manipulations. And while weaker men absorb, react, or retaliate, powerful men simply withdraw. Not to punish, but to preserve. There's a difference between punishing a woman and protecting your peace. A man who knows his boundaries doesn't need to talk about them endlessly. He communicates them through behavior. She raises her voice, he goes silent. She plays games, he exits the field. No drama, no explosion, just absence. And suddenly she feels the shift, the loss of presence, the absence of energy, and that vacuum teaches her more than any explanation ever could. This is why so many women say, "There's something about him. I don't want to lose him." Because on a deeper level she knows. He will not tolerate emotional chaos. He is not addicted to pleasing. He is not afraid to walk away, not because he doesn't care, but because he values his energy more than her approval. And when a man lives like that, something happens. She feels safer around him, even if she doesn't always like what he does. Because strength, even when misunderstood, creates trust, and trust is the soil for desire. Now take a moment and sit with that. Feel what's stirring in you. Maybe it's clarity, maybe it's challenge, maybe it's a little discomfort. That's okay. This isn't about judging yourself or others. This is about understanding what real masculine power feels like, and how women, whether they realize it or not, respond to it. Because power isn't loud, it's not performative. It's not about overpowering her. It's about centering yourself so deeply that nothing she does can shake your core. There's a moment every woman remembers. It's when she realized she couldn't quite figure him out, not because he was deceptive, but because he was disciplined. There was a rhythm to the way he lived, a quiet steadiness that didn't shift with her moods or bend to her affection. She felt connected, but never fully in control, and that feeling of being with a man who remains unmoved by emotional weather creates a storm inside her. That's where mystery begins, and that's exactly where we left off. Let's continue. Secret #4. He does not confess his temptations. He masters them in silence. We live in a time where honesty is confused with confession, as if the only way to build trust is to disclose every thought, every temptation, every fantasy. But powerful men, they do not unburden their desires in the lap of a woman, especially not for emotional relief. They face those shadows alone, not because they are hiding something shameful, but because they know you do not gain respect by making a woman your priest. She wants to feel safe with you, not overwhelmed by what you might do. She doesn't need to hear about every woman you're attracted to, every urge you resisted, every thought that flickered at the gym, at the bar, or online. Because confession, when rooted in anxiety, places the burden on her, but mastery creates containment. And containment is what makes women feel safe. There's a kind of quiet masculinity that says, yes, I've been tested, but no, I will not project that test onto you. A man who carries his temptations with integrity does not use his partner as a dumping ground for his unresolved impulses. He handles them with stillness, and that stillness, it doesn't make him weak, it makes him trustworthy. You see, there's a reason why women admire men who walk away from chaos, not men who keep explaining their failures. It's not perfection she wants, it's self-command. It's knowing you have access to destruction, but you choose discipline. Because when a woman senses that you have power, but you've chosen restraint, that's when she respects you and desires you. There's nothing more magnetic than a man who can sit in front of temptation and say, "I do not serve you. I do not owe you. I do not need to talk about you to feel strong. I've already dealt with you in the quiet." That is a man she cannot shake. And that brings us to a truth that many women know but rarely admit. Secret #5. He does not reveal his final plan because mystery is part of his leadership. Now this one is subtle. But it's real when a man tells a woman everything he's going to do, how he's going to do it, when he's going to arrive, how long he'll be gone, what he's planning for the next 5 years. She nods. She smiles. She thinks she's getting intimacy, but slowly she loses respect, because a man who lays his entire future on the table before it's built loses something sacred, the power of becoming. There's a difference between being transparent and being predictable. A powerful man is not a liar. But he is not fully legible either, and that mystery is not manipulation, it's leadership. It's a quiet sense that I know where I'm going, even if you don't fully see it yet. He doesn't over-explain his moves, he moves. He doesn't ask for permission to dream, he dreams, and he doesn't seek validation for being misunderstood. He allows her to wonder because her wonder is part of his allure. You see, predictability makes a man feel safe. But mystery makes him unforgettable. When a woman senses that he is up to something meaningful, that his life is unfolding beyond her comprehension, she becomes more curious, more inspired, more attentive. Not because he's playing games, but because she senses, this man is going somewhere and I want to be close enough to witness it. But she'll never be close enough to control it, and that's what makes her stay. Because when a man is always explainable, always reachable, always available, he loses the very tension that creates desire. Desire needs distance, it needs edges, and powerful men don't just protect that distance, they create it on purpose. It's not about being cold, it's about being ungraspable, like a mountain in the distance. You can feel it. You can move toward it, but you can never hold all of it in your hands. That's what powerful men become. Not a puzzle to solve, but a presence to respect. And here's the paradox. The less he says, the more she listens. The less he gives away, the more she offers, because she's not reacting to what he says. She's responding to who he is. And who he is someone with a plan he doesn't need to prove. Take a breath, that was a lot. Let it land in your body. This conversation is not about control. It's not about power over women. It's about power within men. It's about reclaiming the quiet dignity of mystery, the kind that doesn't need to be broadcasted or decoded. The kind that stands and lets the world wonder, we're not done yet. There's something sacred about a man who no longer needs to be understood to feel validated. A man who walks into a room not to be seen, but because he knows where he's going. You feel him before he speaks. You feel him when he leaves, and the paradox is, you never really get him, but you never forget him either. This energy, it's not accidental, it's cultivated, grown in silence, in solitude, in the nights when no one was watching. And this is what so many women miss when they say they want vulnerability. What they're often really craving is containment, not chaos. So let's go deeper. Let's talk about the essence of what makes a man powerful, not just to the world, but to the woman lying next to him. Because you see, there's one more layer to all this, and it's not just about what he withholds, it's about what he embodies. Secret #5 isn't about withholding at all, it's about what he silently carries that women feel but can't name. He carries the weight of self-respect. This isn't something he brags about. It's not a line on his dating profile. It's in the way he stands. It's in how he protects his peace. It's in how he responds when someone tests his limits without becoming aggressive, without falling into defense. He doesn't demand respect. He commands it through consistency, through emotional clarity, through the refusal to betray himself just to keep someone close. And women, they don't always recognize this in words, but they feel it viscerally. It's in the way he doesn't argue about things that don't matter. It's in how he leaves when he's no longer honored. It's in the calmness of his presence, because a man who respects himself doesn't need chaos to feel alive. This kind of man, he listens carefully, but he doesn't explain himself repeatedly. He apologizes when he's wrong, but never to avoid discomfort. And when he gives love, it's whole, intentional, present, but never desperate. And here's the catch: women are not used to this. They're used to men who prove, men who chase, men who make themselves small to be chosen. But the powerful man, he's not trying to be chosen. He's already chosen himself. That energy changes everything. It shifts the dynamic. It removes the need for performance. It makes love cleaner. It allows her to relax. Not because he's soft, but because he's grounded. And grounding, for a woman, is erotic. When he respects himself, he teaches her how to treat him without saying a word. He sets the tempo for the relationship, not through control, but through consistency. She doesn't wonder where she stands because his integrity is unshakable. She may not always like what he does, but she trusts it because he never sells himself out for temporary comfort. I want you to hear this part very clearly. A woman can love many men in her lifetime. She can laugh with them, cry with them, build dreams with them. But the man she cannot replace is the one she could never fully reach, not because he was closed, but because he was rooted. There's a difference. He let her in, but not everywhere. He gave her presence, but not performance. He touched her body and also her soul, but never to possess it, only to remind her that hers was already whole. That kind of man doesn't just leave a memory. He leaves a mark. He's the one she thinks about in quiet moments, not because he shouted his love, but because he lived it with quiet authority, and that, right there, is the kind of masculine presence we need more of. Not loud, not desperate, not reactive, but emotionally attuned, spiritually grounded, psychologically sovereign. A man who doesn't need control to feel powerful, because he already is powerful in the deepest sense of the word. This is why we're having this conversation, not to teach men how to manipulate, but to help them remember. To remember what it feels like to lead with presence, to love without losing themselves, to set boundaries without resentment, to pursue connection without surrendering their soul. And to women listening, this isn't a warning. It's an invitation to see masculinity not as a threat, but as a sacred energy worthy of your respect. To recognize that when a man keeps parts of himself sacred, it's not always rejection. Sometimes it's reverence. Sometimes it's the very thing that protects the relationship from crumbling under the pressure of emotional fusion. We need polarity. We need the dance between mystery and vulnerability, between closeness and individuality. That's what creates depth. That's what keeps desire alive after the comfort sets in. So let's stop asking men to rip themselves open in the name of intimacy. And let's start honoring the men who cultivate silence not as a way to disappear, but as a way to lead. You don't need to understand everything about a man to be close to him. You just need to feel safe in the strength of what he does not say. Take that in. Let's be honest, most of us were taught that closeness means full access, that intimacy means nothing is off limits. That love must be proven through total transparency. But what if I told you the opposite is also true? What if the men we remember the most were the ones who didn't always let us in, not to punish, not to hide, but to protect something sacred? That sacred thing is their internal center, the place where their power lives. And the truth is, every powerful man guards it like a flame, not because he fears love, but because he understands. When you give that away too quickly, you lose more than your strength. You lose yourself, and that's why we've spent this time together, not to teach tricks, not to stir drama, but to pull back the curtain on something women feel but rarely name. That deep electric tension of being around a man who is fully present, and yet never fully yours. Because he is his first. And now that we've walked through the secrets, his emotional restraint, his purpose, his boundaries, his silence, his self-respect, it's time to ask a deeper question. What does it feel like to love a man like this? It feels unsettling. It feels like heat and gravity and stillness all at once. Because for the first time, you're not dancing in a familiar pattern. You're not leading with charm or persuasion. You're not performing. You're meeting yourself. Because he doesn't need you to be small. He doesn't need to be needed. He invites you to rise not with words, but with how he exists. He creates the kind of space where your emotions don't run the show, but they're not rejected either. Where your beauty is seen, but not worshipped. Where your mind is respected, but not manipulated. Where your body is adored, but never owed. This man, he teaches by being, and here's where it gets even more powerful. He knows he's not for everyone. Not every woman wants to be with a man she can't fully mold. Not every woman is ready to love someone she can't control. And so he waits, not passively, but confidently, because he's not trying to be picked, he's building. He's leading, he's cultivating a life so rich, so disciplined, so rooted, that if you come into it, it's not to complete him. It's to walk beside him, and that shift, it changes everything, because suddenly women start noticing the difference between a man who begs for connection and a man who attracts it without chasing. They realize that emotional availability is not the same as emotional instability. They feel the difference between a man who dumps everything on the table and calls it truth, versus a man who holds his truth with care and gives it to those who have earned it. And when they look back, when they think about the men who left the deepest imprint, it's not the ones who gave them everything. It's the ones who gave them themselves authentically, selectively, and powerfully. That's the man she never forgets. Because she didn't just date him, she grew beside him, and that growth, spiritual, emotional, erotic, that becomes the blueprint for what she wants forever. You don't need to impress every woman. You don't need to be understood by all of them. You need to be anchored enough that the right one recognizes herself in your presence and meets you there. Because real power doesn't shout, it doesn't beg, it doesn't explain, it walks, and the ones who are ready for it will follow. So if you've ever been called distant, mysterious, too private, too hard to read, maybe what they're really trying to say is that your power makes them uncomfortable. And maybe that's okay, because the woman who is ready for your strength will not try to decode you. She will honor you, and in return you'll give her something no man before you ever did, a man who doesn't need to be understood to be loved. A man who knows who he is, whether she stays or whether she walks, and in that stillness is your freedom. So take a breath, feel that truth settle into your spine, let go of the pressure to be explainable, digestible, emotionally naked at all times. And come back to what you already know, that the most powerful thing a man can keep is himself. If this stirred something in you, share it. Comment below, and don't just watch, reflect, integrate, live it. And if you're a woman listening, maybe now you understand why he didn't open up all the way. Maybe now you see he wasn't hiding from you. He was protecting the version of himself you were meant to meet, not the one who told you everything, but the one who made you feel everything. Thank you for being here. You already know what to do. This is the Intimacy Lab. And we don't just talk about love. We transform the way you experience it.